Hello, I want to welcome you to a special edition of Book Talk, where today I am going to be discussing all things writing, authoring, entrepreneurship, and fun with my good friend, Susan May Morin. You have probably read her romantic suspense and fallen in love with Deep Haven, but this woman is one of the most accomplished people I know. She writes fabulous books very quickly, and it has turned it into a planner that we're going to be talking about that's based on values and is for not just writers, but all creatives. And really just about anybody can use it to really hone in on who are you and what matters to you and how do you build your life around that. But then she also has a publishing empire and all of these great things. But what I most appreciate about Susie is that she pours her knowledge back into other people. She doesn't hoard it and sit there and go, I have unlocked the key to story and I'm going to keep it for myself. Instead, she has turned around and developed all kinds of writing resources and teaches at so many conferences like ACFW. And I value that teaching so much that anytime I can, I am sitting in the front row taking tons of notes, because every time I listen to Susie teach about writing, I learn something that makes my books better. So Susie, I am so glad to have you with me today.
Well, thank you, Cara. That was awesome. That was a really nice introduction.
Is there anything that I missed that you want to add? I mean, besides, you live in two places.
I live in two places and I don't clean my house. How about that?
And you really love football. That's another thing that we should.
I do love football very much. I was a massive football mom. I committed to football for years. I miss it greatly. Now I'm not sitting in the stands, although I don't have to sit in the stands and freeze anymore. So that's
yeah. Well, because Minnesota, I mean, football would be during the really cold time of the year.
Oh yeah. Like you get one nice game and the rest are all like, I have like 5, I was going through my stuff trying to weed out and I have like 5 different coats that I used to wear and I would just layer them on and they all are branded, the football team and stuff. So what am I going to do with them? Like, I can't wear them around town. So I'm like, what am I doing with all this stuff? I should have thought about that before I purchased them all. But anyway, yeah.
Well, and one of my friends, I was having lunch with her today for her breakfast, and she was talking about how she has decided the best way to go to a football game, and this is in Indiana. So I figure you'd layer a couple of these, but sleeping bags. Because she's like, you just step into the sleeping bag and then it's a windbreaker and it's down-filled and you can last through just about anything.
Oh yeah, no doubt. That's exactly right. And then if you get the right kind, you can unzip the bottom. So then it's like this cocoon, but just push your feet there. And I always wore like my Uggs, so that was really warm. And then, I've done the sleeping bag thing. And the best is when it goes over your head and then you just can stand up and sit down and
and then you're set.
Yeah.
But I was laughing. Because I'm like, I don't think they'd let me do that at Purdue. I don't think I could show up at a Purdue football game with the whole, like I'm hopping along.
Unless it had Purdue on it. You might be able to do like if you had it embroidered, with Purdue, then you could maybe get away with it. So
maybe I might have to try that. But fortunately, games haven't been too cold yet this year.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, but football's the best. Although I'm a college football person. But
oh, me too. I love the University of Minnesota Gophers. So there you go.
That's I'm a Nebraska and Purdue fan. So.
Oh, we beat Nebraska this year.
Nebraska keeps getting like within a touchdown.
They do. They are actually much better than their scores or than their record indicates.
Yeah.
Yes, this is really true. Okay. So yes.
And so y'all are seeing why Susie and I we can talk for forever. We have so much fun together. And I have to say, I'll never forget, there were a couple of ACFWs where I reached out to you and I was like, hey, we're both here. Would you like to have lunch? Mm-hmm. And I was always so honored that you're like, sure, because you're like this incredibly successful writer and you were making time. And those, I always learned so much from those. So to me, what we're doing right now is actually just letting other people in on our conversations about how do we be more effective, really business people as writers, because writers want to just be creatives. And you and I mean, I've got an MBA, I teach at a business school. You basically have an MBA. I don't think you have the letters, but
I don't have the letters. I run my own companies. Yeah,
you run lots of companies very, very well. And a lot of writers and creatives really struggle with that. Mm-hmm. So let's start with the planner.
Okay.
How did you get to a point where you're like, I need to invest time? Because this is not just like a calendar. There is so much more to it. What was the process that got you to this system?
So that's a great question. So I've actually been using my own version of a planner like that one for about probably 20 years, or maybe 25 years. So I started before I was ever a writer. I was a missionary and I was a homeschooler. So as a homeschooler, you have to have a plan. And I realized that I needed to figure out how to manage my time well, especially since I was called to be I was a missionary, I was a homeschooler, and I was writing. So, I had to figure out how I was going to be a homeschooling mom, be a provider for the family in some ways. I had to go to the market and all that kind of stuff. I taught English as a second language. I volunteered in a orphanage, and then I was also writing. So I was like, when am I going to
In
do
Russia? Let's not forget the in Russia part.
Right, in Siberia. And so
you really like cold.
Not so much anymore, but at the time, and still I do. It's snowing up my house right now. It's really lovely. So I had to figure out how am I going to manage all this. And I realized early on that I am not a good multitasker. I can't do 3 or 4 things well. I have to do one thing at a time. I'm a multi-focuser. And so I realized if I can focus on this little piece right here and do that well, then I can finish that, and then I can move on to the next thing and the next thing. And I came up with a system that worked for me, that was called time blocking. And now it's really popular, but I've been doing it for about 25 years. And basically it's that blocking of time where you focus on something and then you focus on something else, and you can move those time blocks around according to your schedule, but then it helps you focus. So those were the early days of planning. And then I also always had, sort of a 5-year plan and a 3-year plan and all that kind of stuff. Well, as I got older, I realized that I didn't want to just haphazardly make plans. I realized that I needed to figure out how I was planning that had an impact on my life. So I started planning by what brought me joy and, some long-term things like that. But then I got cancer, and it was about 4 years ago. And I started to realize, wait a second here. I want to live my life in such a way that if I died tomorrow, I could go, yep, that's exactly how I wanted to live my life. And so I started to look at my planning, and I said, wait a second, Susie. You always live your life by your values, but have you planned your life by your values? Have you planned your time based on your values? So what happens is that we start going along with our day, and there's a lot of people that do this already, but instead of taking our lives and saying, okay, I value this or this or this, we just sort of go through our lives and we find ourselves doing things that we don't necessarily value, or we find ourselves involved in projects that we think, oh, that's not a project that I would normally do. And so what happened is I turned my planning around and I started saying, what are my values? And then what does my life look like if I live by those values? And I'm not talking about Christian values. I'm talking about my own personal Susie values. Everybody has their own personal values and things that are important to them, right? And so what are my values? I had to figure that out first. And then how do I plan my time? And so so when I was creating my planner is a system. It's a system of thinking. It's a system of organization. And then it's a system of getting stuff done. But I went back to the beginning and I said, okay, it needs to start with my values, and how do those Yep, right there. And we have a little test that you can take. And then there's a way to figure out how to prioritize your values and how to say, okay, how am I going to find the things that fit with my values the best? So it's a whole program, a whole plan, and it's not very hard. And we actually have classes, but basically we start with looking at the life that you live now and what values are reflected. And we do our little test. And then we say, now let's say what your life would look like if you lived by your values. So the planner, once we did that, and I did it for myself, but I found that people loved it because they were like, this is revolutionary. Now I live my life. And every day I go, yep, I made that decision based on this value, or I did this based on this value. And now guess what? You can say no, because you can say, I'm sorry, that doesn't match my values. That doesn't work for me. And instead of, I know that a lot of people probably don't have a problem saying no, but I do.
I do, yeah.
And so I had to figure out, okay, how do I figure out if something is the right thing to say no to. And of course I pray and all that kind of stuff, but I also said it's a really easy decision when I say, nope, that doesn't match my values. And that also helps me figure out what I'm going to write and how I'm going to spend my time and, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, yes.
How did you drill down to what your values are? Because, you say values and I immediately go, okay, I want to have a home that's always open to students because I teach at a university and to us it's a value, but COVID's kind of shut that down. And so, we're like, okay, so what does that look like today? So having hospitality is a value, but I'm not sure that lines up with what you were talking about. So
no, it totally does. Totally does. That's one of your values. And so as a result of that being one of your values, you need to carve out time in your world to have that value. So one of my values is nurturing my friends and family. So that's one of my, so it's similar to hospitality, but not exactly the same, right? So in my values board, I actually have, let's see if I can show it to you. This is my family board, right? So it says family and it has different people in my values, right? So these are actually that board. And everybody's got and so everybody's got a place. So on there, it says family vacation. It says trip with some friends, trip with another set of friends, birthdays, visit from my children, from my kids overseas, all these other kind of stuff. And I sit down and I figure out where that's going to all fit into my life. And I also have like a way to prioritize things, but because that's a value that goes into my planning and not just, I'm going to figure out where to put it. I actually create slots for it. So for example, one of my values is our best friends, nurturing that relationship. We go out to dinner with them every Friday night. Every single
that's awesome.
Yeah. And that's just becoming that's just a value that I plugged in. And because that's an important thing to me, I never miss it. So it's kind of stuff like that. So to answer your question, we have a questionnaire that helps you figure out what your values are, but there's a lot of really fun ways we get at it. Like, what is your favorite movies? Your top 3 movies will probably tell you a lot about yourself. What are you willing to fight for?
So Black Widow, Bringing Up Baby. I don't know what the third one would be, but I don't know what Black Widow says about me other than
I totally see that. That's you're a strong woman who protects those around her. That's what that says to me. I have not seen Bringing Up Baby, so I don't know that one.
Katharine Hepburn, Cary Grant, 1933 slapstick comedy. It's fantastic. You have to. It's on the top 100 list for just about every movie list, and it's usually in the top 20.
Oh, sorry, I missed it. I will have to read it.
And you like Michael Bublé. I mean, come on.
I do. I love Michael Bublé. I'm a massive fan. Yeah.
I know that you introduced me to him.
You guys were great. We were in the same audience waving to each other in concert. Awesome.
Because we had your first set of tickets and then you and Rachel got better tickets.
I know. You guys were awesome. That was so great of you to go.
It was so fun.
Buy the tickets from me.
Yeah.
You were so great.
Your husband,
because I went to your husband, I'm like, please.
And I'm like,
you really like him. He's very romantic.
And he said, and I think you even did, he's kind of vintage.
I like him. I know. So no, that's right. But yeah, so like even that, like that's a value of mine, is making time out for great events. So like I saw Chicago in concert about a year ago, or 2 years ago before COVID. It was fantastic. So again, I don't feel any guilt about, spending money on a Chicago ticket, because I know that's one of my values, is spending time with my friends. And that was something we did. So again, it's about saying yes to the right things and saying no to the things that don't match you, and then knowing what that is. And yes, and we have a little quiz on how to do that. And I think that's been really revolutionary for me, because now everything I do is aligned with who I am and the values that I have.
That's awesome. So when you're talking about your plan, because you get your values and then you build out your plan, and you are one of the most visionary people I know. And we're a lot alike in a lot I tend to be pretty visionary, but I feel like I am like here compared to the master. So when you you actually took time out between contracts to sit down and map out what your next 3 or 4 years of writing was going to be, because you wanted to do traditional and indie, but you were going to do it with great intention. So how do you come up with that kind of plan and then you actually execute it? That's the amazing thing, is you've got these they call it the big, audacious, hairy goals.
Yeah, yeah.
And you live them in spades, but you actually make them happen. So how do you find that connection between, I think this would be really cool, but actually, because publishing's, I guess I'm not doing saying this very well, but publishing's a world where we as writers actually don't control a lot of things. We're actually at the mercy of publishers and readers, and there's all this stuff that's outside our control. Yet you found a way to kind of reclaim control over that. So how do you do that through this planning process?
Sure. So one thing is that I'm very aligned to what my readers want. And so I look at that and I say, what's selling? What do they want? What do, you know, and I kind of try to talk to my readers and say, what are you looking forward to? Who are your favorite characters? I get a lot of emails of, you know, will you write about this character? Or I'd love to see this happen or whatever. And so I take that and then I look at what my skills are. I also have like this in the planner, I have a let's evaluate what's working for you and what isn't. There's a whole couple pages about that. And so that's a way for me to look and say, what made me the most money? What was the most enjoyable to write? What are the readers looking for? This sort of thing. And I think if we start looking at saying, what do our readers want? Then we are going to boost our sales because you're giving them what they want and you'll get this really strong fan base. And I think that's important. You know, I am just as an aside, you know, it's such a privilege to have readers because in our world today, there are so many things that people could read and so many ways they could spend their time. So you really have to earn your readers' love and respect and, you know, their commitment. And then you have to keep it by giving them what they want, you know, and so that's such an important thing. It's such an honor to have readers, but it's also such a responsibility. So I kind of take both those sides and say, okay, how do I give them what they want and yet still keep my creativity and still surprise them as well. And so that's the one thing. And then I look at, in terms of, you know, I kind of have a big series that I'm always looking at. This is the series I want. And then I have indie publishing has really allowed me to fill in the gaps. I'm a very fast writer, but
You are.
yeah, I love to write. And so it's like my number one thing. And so because of that, I have sort of the big stories, but then I always have time to write the smaller ones. And so the indie books kind of help me fill in the gaps between those. And because I know the worlds I'm creating and the people I'm in the places I'm moving, I now have this sort of integrated Susieverse, you know,
Yeah, you do.
everybody's connected now. So I kind of know where that is. And then really it's a matter of like looking at how many books I want to write, what kind of time I have and looking at my year. I know how long it takes me to write a book. And I have a system. I write 20 chapter books. And I write one chapter a day when I'm getting going. And so I can write a book in 20 work days, really. And so, you know, and then I rewrite it and this sort of thing, but it's, you know, I have this like system. So I kind of know how long it'll take me to write it. And then I just look at my calendar and I realistically put in dates, but I have a whole program on this. When people that get the planner actually have access to all of that, all the tricks and tips, you know, and so that kind of helps a little bit, but I think a lot of it is simply putting it down and making it realistic and saying, okay, this is the day I'm showing up to do this. And then of course, when you're focusing on one thing and you don't have 80 things happening, then it's easier to sit down and get it done.
But I think that's part of the value as experienced writers, because like I know that I can write a chapter a day in an hour to an hour and a half when I'm in the story flow. Now, if I haven't done enough of the pre-work, I'm going to have to do research or I'm going to have to do these different things. But in the flow, I know I can hit that pace or I'm being lazy. And so then you can kind of reverse engineer. But one of the things I had to learn to do the hard way is early in, I had so many books that were due like January 1st or January 15th. And that means you're writing over Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I'd be like, oh, I can write when I'm in Nebraska for Christmas, or I can write on Thanksgiving. And then I went, I'm tired of doing that. And so the idea of sitting down and being just realistic with that, I'm going to want to take 5 days off at Christmas. But because I knew my pace, I could then back in and go, all right, that means I'm not going to be able to get it done in a month. I'm going to need a month and a half because you've got Thanksgiving and you've got Christmas, and just being realistic about
I
what
think
can actually happen.
that's really the key. And I think what happens is people freak out and they go, oh, I have to write this 60,000 word book. And then they sit down and they, for some reason, think they need to write all 60,000 words today, you know, and
you don't.
You don't. You need to write, you know, 2,000 words or 3,000 words or whatever it is. And as long as you plan it and you show up, you can take days off and you can go on vacation and you could, like, I have a book due December 1st. I have surgery like on the day before Thanksgiving. I'm having my knee replaced, which that's a long
Oh,
story. Yeah. That
yeah.
involves a injury with a dog, a bunny, and a hole in the yard. It was very bad. So
Oh
anyway, yeah,
no.
it was terrible. So anyway, but not to worry. I have my book already done. I just kind of moved stuff around and was able to finish it early, so it's like when you have a system, you can have more flexibility. And I really feel like that's so important with so many things of our lives. We have when, life can be systemized in some ways. I mean, obviously, during the time that you're writing your chapter, you're sort of letting your I pants my chapters, but I plan my books, right? So I
Yes.
show up for my chapter and I kind of know what I'm going to do, but not quite, and I enjoy it. Well, same with life, it's like
Yeah.
I'm going out for dinner. I just don't know where, kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
so it's like, I think if you have systems for organizing your time and your life and your clothing, your food and your house and all that kind of stuff, it makes it a little bit easier. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So, since we're talking about the planner, where do people find it? Because one of the things I love about it is you've got a lot of samples up, so people can really get a feel for how it's different. Because I know, like for my daughter, because she's a senior in college, it took finding the right planner. Once she found the right planner, everything got organized.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
that first semester was a hot mess because it wasn't the right planner. And
Right.
so I've learned that, I just kind of have to look and play around it. Obviously, I like this one because I have it.
Mhm.
It's blank because this year has been chaos.
Crazy, and
Yeah.
it's hard to
But
plan anything. So, yeah.
yeah, a little bit of that. So you've got a dedicated website, My Brilliant Writing Planner.
Planner.com. So mybrilliantwritingplanner.com. People can also go to novel.academy and there's a link there as well. So, but yeah, if you go to mybrilliantwritingplanner.com, they can see they can see the whole system. They can see, and again, people use it in different ways. And that's one thing that we've tried to encourage is that just because I use it this particular way, and the pre-planning really is where it's at. We've
Mhm.
got all sorts of, and I tell people just take a day or 2 days and just kind of think through the pre-planning. It's really fun. But then, the other part's the execution. And so, like, for example, we have in our planner, so this is the last year's planner, we have a section for people to write down their menu every day, right? Well, this
Yeah.
is a really small space. And so it's not a really full menu, but I like to write down what I ate. So I write down what I
Oh,
ate, or maybe I'll write down my calories for the day or whatever. I don't write down everything. I don't pre-plan there, I post-plan there, so for
yeah. Well,
um
and that serves an important function too, because that's why I like my Fitbit. My
mhm,
husband's always going, the Fitbit should serve you, not you serve it. And I'm like, but it does serve me
mhm,
because it reminds me to get up. And I'm a
mhm,
happier person if I get up every hour and just walk around the floor, if I'm at work or if I'm here, I get up and I do something because I need that reminder. Oh, have I seen the sun today? Well,
yeah,
okay.
right, right.
In Indiana today, there's not sun. It sounds like there's not in Minnesota, but I'm at 116 days of hitting my step count, in a
Mhm,
row, but it helps me remember to, okay, I need to be moving. I know I'm a happier person and more
mhm,
productive if I'm
mhm,
moving. So this is the tool to make sure I'm doing what I already know my body needs.
right. Right. And that's
So,
really what a planner is. It's a tool to help you
yeah.
organize your life your way. Right. And we have, some tricks and tips and how to do that and how to use it, but really it needs to be your planner. Right. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of, we give you ideas, but there's a lot of people that we have a planner area in Facebook that you can join, and people give different ideas and how they use it and this sort of thing. It really is just a reminder. And I think that's what's kind of fun about it is that here's one of my favorite parts is this daily inspiration. I haven't written in this
Yeah.
one because this is an example. This is not my real one, but this is daily inspiration page. And I love this page because it reminds me to sit down, think through my morning, think through my life, have some prayer time, read a good book, this sort of thing. So
Yeah.
the planner's got just a lot of things like that I love. And then of course my favorite is in the back, the story equation. So it
Yes.
has the story equation, planning worksheets for stories in the back, which I really, really love. So
Yeah, and I love those. And I have to say, this is a great segue to the writing part because the story equation. So for me, it's been taking the story equation and doing the Enneagram with it. And I've got a book
mhm,
that I've been writing on how to use the Enneagram. And it's one of those, it's a personal project that I just need to finish. I need 2 days to sit down and finish the stupid thing. But putting those two together has
So
been
powerful.
so powerful because you can
Mhm.
find the fear, the lie. You can't find the wound. And Beth Vogt always laughs at me because I'm like, yeah, that happy moment, I can't do those. I don't walk around going, oh, the happiest moment was X. She's like, you need to start a happiness journal. I'm like,
You do. That's awesome.
because I'm like, I'm so on to the next thing that I might be like, oh, that was fun. And then I'm off to the next thing. So when it's like, what was their happiest moment? I'm like, who needs happy moments?
Cara, that's really interesting. You should say that, because after I had cancer, I started to make sure that I had moments that I snapshotted in my head where I was like, this is a perfect moment. And I started to have those more and more. So now I have like this sort of mental collection of perfect moments in my life. And I think it is helpful because now I've been more intentional about finding perfect moments that then make me go, okay, this right here is a happy thing, and I think you and I are very driven. We're very busy. And if we don't stop and smell the roses every once in a while, we'll be like, did I miss it? Wait, what just happened?
Exactly.
and generally we are happy all the time. So it's not like we have to have a happy moment, but sometimes it is good to just be like, I worked very hard for this, and this is a happy moment.
Well, and that's where I still struggle with that. Like there was a period in time where I would take my kids to a movie when I turned a book in, just to acknowledge, okay, I actually finished the book, instead of, because I am such okay, finish that book now, onto the next thing. And I've stopped doing that. I'm like, I need to start reinstituting some type of, okay, I'm going to celebrate that this actually is done. It's finished. It's good. And now we can move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
It can be very easy to focus on what's next.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I agree.
So
it's good.
the story equation is something that most people talk about as it was a light bulb moment for them. And I think for me, where it came in is I'm really good at plotting. I'm really good at heroes. I suck at heroines, which is really interesting to me. Everyone's like, really? But I have to really work hard at them. And my agent kept going, you need layers, take more time. You need layers. And I think the story equation helped me figure out how to get to those internal layers. Right. So now I feel like about book 25, it started clicking after all of these books get there and they're good. I go back and I read them and I'm proud of them. They are good books, but there's like this next level that happens when you dig in. So what is this? Number one, what's the best resource of all of yours? What's the one that you're like, if you're trying to figure out story equation and you can't come to a conference and learn it straight from me, right? Here's the resource you need. And here's why it matters.
Right. So if you don't know what the story equation is, I'm going to encourage you to get the book. Here's $10 hard copy. I think
worth every penny.
Yeah, mine's like dog-eared and
mine's up on my writing shelf back there.
Yeah. And it's $10. It's a quick read, but it's very thorough. And then I think it's $5 on Kindle, maybe, I can't remember. And so, but then you can, and then it's got all of the pieces in it. And then of course we've got a class that goes with it if you want to take a class, and then we go deeper. And by the way, we do have an Enneagram series of classes on Enneagram and story equation, because you're right, that works hand in hand together.
Yeah. So. And what I'm basically doing is taking all these resources and tying it into, okay, so when you're building a character, here's the short guide, so that you can just kind of sit down and go, oh, if they're a 3, then they're probably afraid of this kind of thing. So what was the wound that led to that? And then you get the layers. So
good. So good.
Yeah. But so you've got all these classes, and that's through the Novel Academy, right?
Right. So I have a school called Novel Academy, and basically we have probably over 1,000 classes now, maybe not that many.
Oh my gosh.
600. Yeah, we've been around for 10 years. Actually, we are the longest continuous online writing school in the Christian market, or in the inspirational market. So we even are longer than Jerry Jenkins, because he quit halfway through. Yeah. So I was like, we get it. So anyway.
That's great, because especially as conferences are starting to move back to face-to-face, but they're going to be people who aren't comfortable with it, or you just can't get anywhere yet. Yeah. Those classes are a great way to go deeper in your writing.
Right.
And they're great. I mean,
Thank you.
you've got the one that goes with the story equation. It's
Yeah.
like the freebie. Y'all need to go sign up for it. And once you do
Yeah.
one, you're going to want to do a bunch more because
Yeah,
it's
they are fun. They're real, and we meet every Thursday night. And so it's like the class, it has a chat on the side. So it's like fun because people like talk and they get to know each other. And so that's fun. And then we have inside the school, we have little critique groups. And so there's it's like small groups, kind of thing. So then people will get to know each other and they can share, they can critique each other or they can do whatever. So it's really been fun to grow. And during COVID, it's really actually grew a lot because people were like, I have to connect with people. And so it's been a lot of fun, but so I teach about twice a month. And then we have other teachers that come in but we teach everything from beginners to career stuff. Like we've taught on, how to set up your business, how to do branding, how to run how to be an indie publisher, how to be an indie author, how to, all these, everything, just the whole thing.
So let's talk about that real quickly. So you're what I would call an authorpreneur. Say that 6 times really fast.
Right.
Author, but you're also an entrepreneur. You're creating all these businesses, but you're not just creating them, they're successful. So what are 1 or 2 pieces of advice that you would have from going through this process multiple times that you would give to any author on, here's what I've learned as an entrepreneur that can make a difference in your writing life and actually being successful as an author?
Yeah, no, that's great, Cara. Actually, the one thing that I learned was find one thing and do it well. And I know that sounds crazy because I do a lot of things, but actually, so I started my writing career and I wrote in 7 different genres. And so I had a little bit of success in each genre, but it wasn't until I narrowed down to one genre, epic romantic adventure, that I really saw the sales start taking off. Because what happened is that, sure, people liked my chick lit, sure, people liked my romantic comedy, sure, people liked my historicals, my, straight up thrillers, whatever. But once I started to focus in, they were like, we are all in on this epic romantic adventure. And so that brought strength to my brand. And still, I sometimes I put in little pieces of other things, but really it's that. And now people know what to expect when they come to us as My Warren Book. And it's the same with My Book Therapy. So the parent company is called My Book Therapy, and we have done many, many, many things. We have had contests, we have had we've had a magazine, we had a show, we had all sorts of stuff. And it wasn't until we said, we're just going to have our school and our planner, which is part of our program, that we really started to grow. So again, one thing. And so I would encourage people to say, you can try a lot of different things, but until you need to land on one thing and then do that thing very, very well. And once you get done with that thing, you might be able to branch off. Michael Jordan is about basketball. Sure, he played some baseball, but really he's about basketball, And so I really feel like once we find that niche, we need to really drill down and do well at it and learn everything you can about it and be a master in that category. And then I think you'll find you really enjoy it. It'll help you focus, and then you won't have like tons of other things happening. Now it's okay to have other things happening, maybe just a few things and do those well, right?
Yeah, no, that's great advice. Well, thanks so much for joining me today. You have given so much great advice and wisdom for people, and really appreciate your time and cannot wait to read the next book.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. It was really fun to chat with you again.